Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 6 of our course. This is the first week of the second cluster, which is history and practice. So, in a normal agenda, we would be doing our normal good news and shout outs while I'm taking attendance. I do want to let you know about the discussion journal. There's no need for you to share the discussion journal, it's the exact same one that we shared at the beginning of scientific inquiry. So just continue adding on to those Cornell notes there in the discussion journal. But again, no need to resend or reshare the discussion journal unless you haven't already done so. And so then we'll jump into what is history. I have a short video for you to watch, about 5 minutes. Of course, this is an asynchronous class, so we have no discussion groups or breakout groups, but I do still want you to engage with the essential questions so that we can kind of mimic the in-class experience. And then I'll share out some updates as we end the class in our parking lot. So, what is history? It is more than just memorizing dates and events. I can imagine that for many of us in our history classes as we were going through primary and secondary school, it largely was, here's a list of dates, important dates, and those events, and memorize them. I remember it wasn't really until I got into my AP history class, AP US history class in junior year, where I really started, where my teacher really encouraged us and invited us actually to be thinking about history as a story. History is a process of understanding and interpreting the past. It involves analyzing evidence and constructing narratives that explain the human experiences over time. At the end of the day, history is a study of people and societies. How did those societies form? What major decisions shaped that society and the world? It, of course, analyzes the social, political, cultural, and economic developments across different periods and places. And it's also important for us to recognize that history is still an ongoing debate. It is interpretive. Historians can view the same event from completely different perspectives, or shared perspectives, but different as well. This ongoing debate is changing. It's not static. It's constantly revised as new evidence and perspectives emerge. So as an introduction to this course, some of the goals that we'd like to achieve is to how to locate and analyze source materials. So where do historians find their evidence? And how do they decide which sources are trustworthy or valuable? We'll also learn historical argumentation. What types of arguments do historians make? And how do they construct persuasive and evidence-based narratives? And then finally, the production of history. How is history quote-unquote made? What choices do historians face in interpreting the past? And I'll say a little bit more about this when we have our closing remarks, but I want you to think about your own place in history as well as we're going through not only this lesson, but also throughout the course. And so as we do a little bit of thinking, I want you to take some time, pause the video. How were you taught history in schools? What is your own experience? How can you locate your experience within this narrative that we're telling now and what has happened there in the past? Okay, so there is a video that is on Canvas that I would like for you to watch. It is called Reading Like a Historian, and you can find this resource underneath the Module 1 learning resources for the history and practice. But the video is called Reading Like a Historian. It's about 5 minutes long. So take some time to watch that video. And then when you've got a chance, unpause this video and continue on with the sort of thinking questions on the next slide. So now that you've watched the video, I want you to compare and contrast. How does that Stanford video, reading or thinking like a historian, how does it compare to your own experience? And then engage with the essential question for this week: why study history? So I want you to think of something other than, learn from past mistakes. I want you to go a little deeper and think on a much broader scale, why should we study history? And then, record your response somewhere and be ready to think about it or talk about it more as we progress through this class. I also want you to kind of reflect on the essential questions for this week. So, not only why study history, but is history true? And how does the study of history shape our understanding? So, as I promised to you, kind of distilling down this topic of why we study history is because it helps us understand today. There's a common phrase within that historians often say, which is the past is prologue. So we look towards the past because we know that is setting us up for the future. That the present and the past are really intimately tied together. The past shapes the present. Understanding historical context allows us to make sense of current events and inform better decisions for the future. It's also a tool for critical thinking. By studying history, we learn to ask questions about cause and effect, motivation, and consequence, and it helps us to develop the ability to critically evaluate information, challenge assumptions, and think independently. And ultimately, studying history is about the human experience, our ability, as we talked about in the past. Science, right? The science class that we just finished in the cluster talked about how we as organisms came to be, right? I spent a lot of time talking about the Earth and its systems, and talking about the biology and the living organisms that came out of that Earth in the system and how we interact with that environment. Well, now history is a record of us interacting with that environment. So it is about that human experience, and it's also about how we have more than any other organism have been able to shape the environment around us and record our collective history. This is one of the things that the historian David Christian calls collective learning, which is something that's so important um, in terms of how humans have impacted the environment around us. We're only one of few species that is able to pass down our history. We have an incredible luxury to know what was happening back thousands and thousands of years, and through science, knowing what happened millions of years ago as well. The ability of collective learning to add in to our understanding of not only ourselves but where we came from is so integral in studying history. And so that takes us to the end of this week's lesson. I'll remind you that we have now opened up Module 1, ready to start those materials. For the Monday class, your initial post should happen by Friday, 2/21, and your responses should happen to those discussion posts. Remember, should happen before class starts 6 p.m. on the 24th of February. I will see you all then in class on the 24th of February. Make sure, of course, that you're responding and that you're using the discussion journal. And I also want to take this time to highlight looking at the kind of like we did at the beginning of the last class. I want you to be taking a look at Module 5, which is your final project. So please take some time after you finish watching this video to go through that project. See if you have any questions. If you do, you're more than welcome to wait till class next week to ask those questions, or you can throw me an email and I'll be happy to respond. That due date, though, is 3/23. My own grades for this cluster will be due on the 26th, and this one is a much more involved assignment than it was last time, so I'll need definitely a couple of days to sit down and grade and provide feedback on those assignments. As always, please let me know how I can help you out. Please send me an email if we need to jump on Zoom together for some office hours. More than happy to do that as well. I hope you've had a really great week, and I will see you next week when we resume our synchronous classes. Have a great day.